Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I would like to thank the gentlelady from Luzerne County for offering this amendment to House Bill 1737 to provide pandemic liability protection if Centers for Disease Control and state health guidelines are followed. It makes sense to protect the entities that have been trying to protect the public. This amendment provides protections to small businesses. This measure will guard schools, healthcare providers, farmers, and manufacturers that produce personal protective equipment from facing lawsuits during the COVID-19 pandemic, as long as those entities are following CDC guidelines for mitigation efforts. Locally owned businesses are struggling to get up and running under the weight of prolonged shutdowns and limitations. Our healthcare workers are fighting to keep our communities healthy. Our school districts, colleges, and universities are providing much needed instruction for our students. The last thing that any of these entities need is to worry about being sued despite following all public health guidelines. Without these much-needed protections in place, taxpayers could be dealt a higher property tax bill, hospitals could go into bankruptcy, and small businesses could be shut down, despite doing everything that they have been asked to do by public health officials. Mr. President, before my tenure as a legislator, I was a school board director. And what I can tell you is that school boards across the Commonwealth have warned that without COVID-19 liability protections in place, school districts could be financially crippled or shut down. Public schools have been working really hard to resume in-person instruction as COVID-19 pandemic continues. Despite all of their planning and preparation being done in accordance with state and federal guidance, there's no guarantee that public schools can prevent any and all potential exposure to COVID-19. They need enhanced protections during this time from frivolous and opportunistic lawsuits alleging exposure to this virus. School leaders fear it's not just a perception, it's reality, because we know that even unsuccessful lawsuits will result in increased spending that will result in increased local school taxes and school budget cuts in the future that could severely, negatively impact the opportunities and education that our students receive. Mr. President, I urge my colleagues to join me in casting an affirmative vote for this amendment to provide COVID-19 liability protections for healthcare providers, small business owners, manufacturers of PPE, school districts, colleges, universities, government service providers, farmers, all of those entities that have worked hard to protect the public by adhering to public health recommendations. Thank you, Mr. President.